All right, President Obama, he's calling for a united global effort to take on ISIS. He's also urging a grassroots effort involving everyone from teachers to counselors, police officers, local religious and community leaders. A three-day White House summit on countering violent extremism. It wrapped up in Washington this week. Let's talk more about this. We have on the phone with us Michael Downing. He's the deputy chief with the Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau at the LAPD. Also joining us, Harris Zafar. He's the national spokesman for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA, also the author of Demystifying Islam, Tackling the Tough Questions. Thank you both for joining us. And Michael, I want to start with you. You attended this summit. Some critics say that this was a lot of talk, question the substance. What do you believe? Are there actionable items that came out of this that will be measurable over time?
Oh, definitely so. I think there was a tremendous value, and it really raised this really sensitive subject to a national level. We've been doing this work since 2008, and I think the federal government recognizes that, law enforcement is only one little piece to this, and that we really need to create more partnerships, more whole of community. And it's not just the Muslim communities, it's Jewish communities, Christian communities, Sikh communities. This is something that affects everybody. It really affects humanity, and we need to step up and get more whole of government involved and develop more strategies, including mental health.
One thing that we talked about this morning is it's not just extremism, or some would call it Islamic extremism, that there are sovereign citizens that are mentioned, and many other types of violent extremism. Harris, let me come to you. The president says that Muslim communities have to take action in helping counter violent extremism. Let's play a bit of what the president said.
Now, Muslim communities, including scholars and clerics, therefore have a responsibility to push back, not just on twisted interpretations of Islam, but also on the lie that we are somehow engaged in a clash of civilizations, that America and the West are somehow at war with Islam.
So how should Muslim leaders do that, and do you think they're doing it enough?
Well, at the outset, we in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community were very happy to be active participants in this week's summit. For almost a century, we've been extremely civically engaged, including from our work back in President Hoover's days, because we have in our DNA this concept of fighting extremism, having paid the ultimate price with our own lives, being butchered at the hands of violent extremists. And the summit was a very healthy discussion about these operational changes to fight extremism. The president, as you said, spoke about the role Muslim leadership play in countering this violent extremism. But he also fairly said you cannot typecast Muslims with this broad stroke that ISIS is Islamic and thus integrated within Islam. It was refreshing for the president to echo the message of the Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmed, as the leader of the largest organized international Muslim community in the world. His Holiness has not only condemned ISIS as entirely un-Islamic, he's completely dismantled their ideology and has spoken both about the role that Muslims have to play, leaders especially in reaching out to the youth to counter the extremism, but also the role that governmental leaders have to play in identifying, for example, the source of the funding and cutting off the funding of groups like ISIS. That's truly their fuel. And so that's why we were really happy to see what the president had to say, and we are fully there with him, having done for several things for the past several years to counter the acts of extremists, and I'm happy to explain more about what's being done in that regard.
Well, let me get to Michael, because there's Los Angeles, the police department, and as I've said, Michael, you're with the LAPD. LA is one of three cities in a pilot program to counter violent extremists, and some critics question their surveillance and if this opens the door to increased surveillance of Muslim Americans. How do you counter that and temper those concerns?
So look, there will always be a need for intelligence, for surveillance operations, and to diminish operational capability of the terrorists. That will always be there. However, with the Countering Violent Extremism Initiative, that is not an intelligence exploitation platform. In fact, if you make it part of your initiative on countering violent extremism, you're going to fail because you're going to lose your legitimacy. This is about outreaching and engaging to all faiths, all people, to especially those that are on the fringe, that have grievances, that feel discontent or maybe oppressed, and actually educate them about access to government, integrate them into societies, give these communities and individuals a voice so they can participate, and then encourage civic engagement where law enforcement could actually step back away from a securitized relationship and let the community, whole of community take hold. Yeah. Putting on domestic violence workshops, putting on youth development workshops, outreaching to inner city youth, doing all those types of things that really inspire communities and make them feel like they're part of the community.
Yeah, and
there's a sense of belonging.
It will take more than the LAPD and community leaders. It also takes family leadership and schools as well. Michael Downing,
Absolutely.
Harris Zafar, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.